Hey everyone, Attorney Nathan Sweet here with the Catholic American. All right, folks, strap in because today on the Catholic American, we're diving into something that's going to light up your worldview like nothing you've heard on the internet right now. I'm talking about what it really means to be Western in the Western legal tradition. And holy smokes, man, East versus West has all kinds of meanings that you might know. But this one's more exciting than anything you'll dig up on Ancestry.com. And man, I love Ancestry.com. I really do. I'm a total nerd. But the best thing is, Ancestry.com has a subscription. You get suckered into and you forget to cancel. You don't have to pay anything for this. You don't have to pay a dime. You can help subscribe, and that can help me, keep this thing going. Let's get the word out, because once you hear this, you're going to want to. This is a huge part of why you think and believe the way you do. And it doesn't matter if you're an American Catholic conservative or an American Catholic liberal. I'm here to tell you straight up, you are Western. So howdy, partner. You can't get away from it any more than I can escape my English, Irish, Scottish DNA that gives slightly red-haired beards that confuse everyone and where it comes from. And I can't get away from it, neither can you. So what do we mean by Western? Well, I don't mean the Wild West and the lawlessness in America. So that's obviously a joke. And in some fields of study, we talk about the East-West split in Europe and Asia. And that's why we call the Middle East and the West. We're not talking about that. And at the end of World War II, we started calling the West all the non-communist countries. And I'm not talking about those more famous modern meanings. This goes way deeper, way deeper. So what do I mean by Western? That's so fundamental to your view of the world, surpassing anything that you could uncover about yourself today on Ancestry.com. Such a great site. Or other areas that you read in the news. This is the most interesting thing you'll find today. I'm here to tell you about an event that kicked off the Western legal tradition and what made you Western, partner. And that's the foundation of what you believe and stand on today that you probably haven't been taught much about. It's called the investiture struggle. The investiture struggle. Don't fall asleep. All right, strap in, because we're diving into the investiture struggle. It's an epic showdown. It really is. That happened around at 1075 AD and went to 1122 AD. And it's the key event that you probably don't know about that shaped your Western worldview in the ways that you just assume. We're going to hit it clear and strong real quick here. And holy smokes, this isn't some dull history tale. I'm telling you, it's interesting. You go look up more about it. It's the breakthrough that separated church and state, keeping everything balanced going forward, or striving for a balance going forward. Pope Gregory VII was a bold leader, and he faced off against the Holy Roman Emperor at the time. And he was Henry IV. And he was a very power-hungry ruler who thinks that he can appoint his own crony bishops, like choosing his own team. And he wanted the power to do that and not give it to the Pope. Investiture, that's just a term for granting church leaders their symbols of office, like the ring and the staff. But Henry wants total control, blending spiritual authority with his empire, like a messy overlap that causes nothing but trouble. Remember, we as Catholics, that's completely normal in the sense of, rings and staff, because it's the kingdom of God. But it's the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of man. So Pope Gregory says, no chance this is going to continue. And he actually winds up excommunicating Henry from the sacraments, and that's a major setback for him. After a Saxon uprising in the Holy Roman Empire, Henry, in a bind, travels barefoot through the snow down in 1077. He pleads for mercy just to stay in play. And Pope Gregory lifts the excommunication. We're all about mercy. And it's a temporary truce. King Henry IV is not great after that, honestly. The conflict continues with forces clashing, and there's more exclusions and rival leaders emerging as obstacles really to getting things settled. And there's so much interesting history here. We'll cover later with a guest in depth. But this key struggle in 1122 AD ends with a concordat of Worms settles, and it's settled firmly. The church manages spiritual appointments coming out of this, and the emperors handle their secular duties. They can make recommendations, basically, but the Pope appoints. And This eventually leads to the rule of law and trained professionals in the field, like lawyers, the vital separation of church and state that we take for granted now. So why does it matter? Well, that's alone massively important. But to kind of drive this home, we should think about our day in this light. We shouldn't allow government to overstep into faith matters or want to merge state and church again to solve problems. And two, this allowed for the formation of the first Western legal system. It led to a new canon law that we'll talk about of the Roman Catholic Church, and eventually it led to new secular legal systems as well, like royal law, urban law, and others. The term Western law refers to people whose legal traditions stem from these events. This is the first major distinction and recognition in the Western legal tradition that came for the separation of church and state. So what does this mean? It means it gives us the origins of the separation of church and state in a systematic historical way, things that Jefferson was studying and our founding fathers. And for now, I want to remind you that for most of human history, almost all that we know of, law was not seen as a separate body of work that was above us all, including those over us. It is a unique and wonderful blessing to have the rule of law over us and our leaders today. And this was not always so. In fact, it has almost always been the opposite. The idea of having professional lawyers in universities that teach them and to view it as a distinct field of study and as distinct from the state or the church, and as distinct from just the ruler making up what he wants. And then the idea of the First Amendment and the separation of church and state that Jefferson talks about and JFK speaks about. Man, it all flows from this early development. And that obviously came from other places too, but we understand that these principles, we can say, with these principles, we can say to two distinct groups in our day, no, we don't want Christian nationalism, a formal marrying of the church and state. It's a terrible idea, and it won't work. And also to secularists. We created the idea of separation of church and state. It does not mean that you leave your morals, your faith at home in deciding how government should work. We shouldn't leave them out of the political process. In fact, we as Catholics should allow our faith to judge what is right and wrong in the secular world and be involved in voting and be good citizens. We also understand that the investiture struggle shows us that the separation of church and state is fundamental to preventing corruption by the government into the church. After the investiture struggle, the Western legal tradition can be identified pretty simply as the people of Western Christendom, which from 1122 to the 15th centuries in Western Europe were those people who manifested in their common allegiance to a single spiritual authority, the Church in Rome, the Pope. So when there's chaos brewing around us, we as Catholics can set the parameters, the ditches, as Bishop Barron talks about, on either side, even in our political process of what doesn't work. And so we should resist the call to make the American government Christian by formally marrying it in some aggressive prosecutorial manner with the church and marrying these two things, or of the Catholic Church or any church. But the more practical application, since there are very few people who are actually advocating that the church and state be married again, we should understand that the separation of the secular authorities and our church does not mean that we shouldn't vote our values and spread our values in the American democratic system. So we should be good citizens. We should go out there and we should be happy warriors today.